My name is Phil Ramcke. I am the director of Gotterdammerung project. The concept for the Twilight of the Gods, that is already a while back. That is already 8 or 10 years ago. I studied there in Greifswald and sat there with two good friends of mine, Richard and Eric, at the Greifswald harbor. We drank some beers. And then we had the idea of how cool it would be to feel like 14 again, like 13, like 12, where you still actually get scared by surprise moments in video games, where you have that special feeling when you secretly play our game at night when the parents are already asleep, that the neighbor boy, Eric, climbs through the window so that we could continue playing our game secretly. And that's where we got caught, because a zombie suddenly came out of the wall and we both jumped up in fright and screamed loudly. And this feeling, this situation was simply unforgettable. And we actually desired to experience this feeling once more at some point. So I was clear that such a project, as I imagined it, could not be managed alone under any circumstances. But as is often the case when you are not as smart at the beginning of the project as you are at the end, sometimes you find yourself facing a wall and then you think, how do I get over this hurdle now? What is the best way to manage it? And then I also had the idea that one could definitely also carry out a test run. It had already been planned that this production would need to take place over an extended period of time simply because the required financial resources were not available at once due to budget constraints. Yes, and then all of a sudden you suddenly realized it is starting. It is no longer merely just an idea. So the first day of shooting was really crazy. I would say production at feature film level, I have already made hundreds. At commercial film level, that has never been an issue. I was always relaxed every time. I had also been a producer or production assistant in 2 feature film productions before, and that was never a big deal for me. However, on the evening prior to the first Gotterdammerung shoot, I was unable to sleep. I was awake the entire night except for a period of 1 hour and 30 minutes. And I was extremely thrilled because in the end, this small idea that you had 8 years ago is now becoming a reality. Naturally, money was a very, very significant issue. Everything that was available on set, I paid for out of my own pocket. But in the end, it was a very, very tight budget, for which you wouldn't even normally get a trade fair film or an image film. And there was, for example, the TV studio Voss, which supported us there superbly, which said, hey, you get it almost for free from us. And it was truly incredible that such a large number of individuals were willing to assist us, and that we ultimately had a team consisting of 30 people on the initial day of filming.
Hello, I'm Phil. Today I'm directing and doing a little setup here. A cool day.
Yes, the first day of shooting was truly hands-on. The wooden walls were covered with canvases, meticulously set up, and then we proceeded to film 2 crucial scenes. Once the scene with the 2 shots in the church, where the Nazi soldiers are waiting for the main character of the story, and then the scene where a friend of mine walks down a hallway. Just before the first day of shooting, unfortunately, a few little problems came up for me, and it was like this. That many of the people who had helped me before with full heart, with full-time commitment, simply didn't have time anymore because they wanted to start studying, start working, or move away. This has also happened. That means my team has shrunk just before the first day of shooting. However, after the first day of shooting, all of the individuals I mentioned earlier left this small group that I had just mentioned. I had already personally prepared myself that I have to do the production alone and was fully ready to do so. Ultimately, I also ended up quitting my job at the company where I was working at that time. It came to the point where we separated, so to speak, and as a result, I really took the time to focus on Gotterdammerung, dedicating myself fully to its completion and immersing myself in the creative process. I have actually had the opportunity to meet 4 truly wonderful people, something that I didn't even fully comprehend or appreciate at the time when it happened. I had an encounter with Ella, whom I had spoken to on the phone. I personally met Marima in person during our meeting. I encountered Julia and Paul, and I must say honestly, that was my initial impression. We had a very good rapport and established a strong connection very quickly and effortlessly. At times, it was even the sensation that one had been friends for a considerable period of time, and that somehow that you see each other again after a long time. So a feeling came over me in between And that's why I quickly let go of all inhibitions, let go of all fears that I couldn't tell the content of the story and had to keep it secret, and so on. The following day of shooting was dedicated to filming in a cave located near Warstein. The focus of the scene was on the protagonist's ultimate achievement of accessing the castle by navigating through a complex cave system, with the aim of putting an end to the Nazis' occult experiments portrayed in the film. Unfortunately, they are already extremely advanced with it, and by opening a casket, they unleash a Viking curse, namely that the Vikings arise at the place where the casket is opened in order to defend and safeguard the valuable contents of the casket from any potential harm or theft. And regrettably, this also takes place at the exact spot where Livingston, our main character, is currently attempting to sneak into the castle undetected. And all of a sudden, the Viking zombies launch an attack on him from certain walls. And once again, we find ourselves connected to the moment when I had told Eric how amazing it would be to experience that feeling once more, on the evening when the Viking zombie emerges from the wall and you are taken aback thinking, oh no. And I believe the atmosphere was really good. However, it was also simultaneously the conclusion of a period. Thilo Cox departed from our team following the conclusion of the shoot and expressed his preference to concentrate on other projects once more. Of course, I found it unfortunate. As I said, I appreciate his work and I think it's great what he does. Ultimately, though, it transpired to be a positive turn of events because Lucas approached me in search of a cameraman for a project he was working on at that time. The person in charge of lighting on our first and second shooting days. They also provided camera assistance, doing whatever they wanted to help out during the shoot, and had said, "You, Phil, we have already worked together before. Me as a cameraman, you as a producer. Can't we do that with Gotterdammerung? Do we not want to do that?" And then I had a conversation with him for a lengthy period, negotiated for an extended period, and in the end, he ended up becoming the cameraman. And it turned out that even in the scenic film, it is exactly the cameraman I wanted, and above all, the cameraman I needed for capturing the perfect shots. I require a cameraman who can implement my vision, share my vision, and understand my needs accurately and effectively. But I also desire a cameraman who tells me, "You, Phil, this is wrong right now, this is going wrong right now, it should be like this and like that." And I believe that with Lucas, it was just the ideal combination. There was not even one argumentative confrontation with Lucas for even a moment. There was no pointless discussion with Lucas at any time, and practically every single comment he had, or virtually every comment he had, was genuinely a concrete suggestion for improvement, which also made it into the final version of the film adaptation. So the third day of shooting was an absolutely remarkable day, because Paul and I initially traveled from Dusseldorf to Munich, collected his sister there, and then ascended a 2,000-meter high mountain with her as a camera assistant, as a director's assistant, which was truly effortless, covered in snow, where it was extremely perilous and where we did not have the notion to acquire backpacks to ascend, but brought the regular camera cases with us, despite the fact that it would have been more practical to have backpacks for such a challenging hike. Another fact to add, obviously, as we packed a large number of beverages as a precautionary measure and truly left them entirely in the car, and subsequently hiked up the mountain for a duration of 2 hours. That was incredible. And my advice in times of need was, of course, just eat snow to quench your thirst. What we have scientifically discovered later is that it is not simply possible to use snow as a substitute for water. Upon reaching the mountain peak and preparing the camera for filming, we came to the realization that the sky was clear and blue, presenting a breathtaking alpine panorama. However, our intended substitute location of Garmisch-Partenkirchen for Obersalzberg in the film was unfortunately engulfed in thick fog. And then the fog emerged, then it settled down again. We actually waited there for a total of 4 hours just to have the opportunity to capture this truly unique and breathtaking scenery that we had never seen before. Because, as I said, I am a fan of real film recordings, doing as much as possible on set, doing as much as possible on location, and completely avoiding CGI as much as possible. After a 4-hour period, we made the simple decision to abort because we stated that we are unable to go down there without flashlights and headlamps for navigation. One must keep in mind, it is slippery, there are columns that are partially in the field, there are slopes that are not secured, and there's only a small chain to hold onto on one side, and this narrow passage is smooth, as I mentioned, and you still have 2 camera cases in your hand. In hindsight, I don't know what drove us to take this action. Most importantly, it achieved nothing. We couldn't use the recording due to heavy fog. And so we finally accepted it. The Paul, a big CGI fan, I must say, always said, do some CGI, let's go home, we do CGI. And I said, no, I'm looking for it now. I'm looking for this place in the Alps and filming it. And we came to a stop at various villages. I filmed them. We came to a stop at certain field columns, filmed them just to generate some material for our project. And in the end, I eventually gave up because you have to say it was somehow Sunday, well, 7 p.m. or something, and we still had to go to Dusseldorf. And of course, it is not self-evident to make this path. And just before sunset, and this sunset has already commenced, and we are currently driving over a bridge just prior to reaching the Austrian-German border, when suddenly we are greeted by the breathtakingly perfect panorama. And it was a breathtakingly beautiful feeling to be able to give up something because reason ultimately prevailed over daydreaming. And then you are still rewarded with such a great recording, with which I am really 100% satisfied. The fourth day of shooting was the shoot in Norway. That was also a very interesting thing. Additionally, right before the shoot, it was flu season once again. And right before the day of shooting, a few individuals dropped out on us once again. We were only able to drive at a speed of 30 kilometers per hour on their expressways, and then we picked up Dennis and Lucas at the airport, drove to the hotel, and got all the equipment out of my car because it was completely stacked up to the roof, even on the back seat. The car was so full that there was no space left for anything else. Packed the things together, assembled them, finished assembling them, so that we only had to take them to the filming location and then started at 5 a.m. to the location where we filmed. Once there, of course, I had also prepared myself in advance for the moment we would be there. And there they said that it takes about 2 hours of walking to get to the Preikestolen. This is a landmark of Norway, you could say. A special rock formation, but also suitable for filming. It is basically a wedge that protrudes from the mountain. You have the opportunity to be above the fjord and film along the entire fjord. Yes, what I didn't consider at that moment is that this is the time indication in summer when everything is good and everything is great. It happened by chance that the mountain guard warned us there and strongly recommended that we turn back and not continue walking. It was really only due to their warning. With an hour of loss, I then implemented Plan B, which I had prepared. Once we drove along the southern part of the fjord to the other side of the fjord and found a very beautiful place there. We had to climb a little bit. That was a piece, so a 2-meter high rock that you really had to climb up with a rock crevice. And I believe that the outcome speaks for itself, that it was the correct decision to do this and to capture this magnificent view we had there on this rock together with Livingston. Because that's what makes it authentic in the first place, that we can tell the story of Norwegian resistance. We work in Norway, we fight in Norway, and Livingston is in Norway. This must be clear for the viewer why it is like that. After this day of shooting in Norway, a short break was necessary. However, I must reiterate we were incredibly proud of our accomplishments in Norway. We had the editor, Paul Scherer, prepare a first mini teaser from the available footage, which further reinforced our sense of pride. And then it became evident to us for the initial time, yes, there was not a substantial amount of material yet, it was a duration of 10 seconds. However, what we had produced was of such excellence that we experienced a genuine surge of euphoria. During that period, I also have to mention that I got together with my current fiancée and naturally experienced another massive boost of euphoria, which added to my overall happiness. And from there, Gotterdammerung really began to progress like crazy. The upcoming shooting day was scheduled to take place in a highly prestigious house, I would dare to say. A location where the Nazis convened to discuss their advancements on the excavation project they are currently carrying out. And on the other hand, there are the critics who consider these occult experiments a waste of time and hocus pocus. The team was very motivated at that time. They were very disciplined, each and every one of them. In advance, Lucas, Julian and I have already loaded everything at Ramcke, left early in the morning, set up everything in 2 bridges, completed the whole scene, and afterwards we also went to celebrate in the shisha bar, relaxed a bit again. And the following morning at 8 o'clock, individuals from Dusseldorf, Cologne, from various locations, from Duisburg, came and reached the location to commence this filming session in our company. In retrospect, I have to say that was the most beautiful shoot ever. Every person was disciplined. None of them were sitting on the floor playing on their phone. Everyone was totally happy, they were totally into it. To drive this forward, and the first shoot with multiple actors for Lucas and me, it was truly wonderful to receive feedback from the fellow actors who provided it on the spot, expressing that they found the team to be extremely motivated and polite. They mentioned that such professionalism and accommodation is not commonly seen in television or other film productions. That the mood, these vibes that were going through the room simply euphorized everyone. And one of the actors, Peter, then said that after this shoot we will definitely have one more big Gotterdammerung fan. That was in fact the most significant form of admiration you can receive from an actor, to explicitly mention that he was granted the platform to unfold his talents and ideas freely and in a creative manner without any constraints or limitations. It is wonderful to receive recognition for establishing a conducive atmosphere that fosters creativity. And that is the reason why I truly learned to love my team there for the first time, and the support they provided me was invaluable. We came across Heinrich Himmler, Ingo Wimmer, by me saying to Marie that the biggest challenge for us for this whole film will be to make the only historical person we show there, namely Heinrich Himmler, look really authentic. And at the same time, he lives and embodies the character Heinrich Himmler in the film, in the teaser, in such a way that it appears genuine and true to the fans of the film as well as to the critics who analyze and evaluate it. That one buys this man, he is Heinrich Himmler, and he is this mass murderer who really existed back then, which is not a fictional role or story, it really happened back then. We have to somehow incorporate it into the film. And Marie said, "Show me a photo of Himmler," and I showed her a photo on my phone, and she was like, that's Ingo, let's call him immediately. During the Christmas season, he called me to tell me a few updates about his own Himmler research that he has been conducting. He watched documentaries. He has read numerous books about Heinrich Himmler to portray the conflict between the mass murderer and his dear uncle Heinrich, as he was commonly known by people in his immediate surroundings. This was an important aspect he wanted to emphasize in his work. As I mentioned, we have been a low-budget project. It is incredible that people who are well known for their performances on television or in movies suddenly decide to join us. The following shooting day took place at Marksburg, where the castle owner, Mr. Wagner, offered the association the use of the castle for the shoot. Certainly, we were only given a very limited time frame to avoid overly restricting the tourist groups, but the Marksburg castle was well suited as a filming location, because it is also a popular tourist destination for American tourists. And since one of our primary target groups is Americans, it was naturally great to be able to capitalize on this recognition value and film based on this book. And naturally, a castle built several hundred years ago does not have a car ramp entrance where you can drive up relaxed. We had to transport the equipment up a distance of several hundred meters. Additionally, there was an extremely weighty component comprising sandbags, large lamps, crank stands, and other items that we had to manually carry up using our physical strength. I believe I have never experienced such an intense training in any gym as carrying it up there. And this filming location was special because it was a real knight's castle. It was exactly such a place where the Nazis could protect and carry out their experiment. And despite the fact that we utilized a distinct castle for the external look of the castle, the interior of the Marksburg was ideal for this photography session. During this shoot, Rebecca Dyson-Smith also arrived on set for the first time, taking on the role of the female protagonist. She portrays the daughter of a renowned German resistance fighter who is also actively involved across Europe, battling against the Nazis, whether it is in Germany, Denmark, or Norway. And she is somewhat similar to Little Red Riding Hood in that situation, carrying her basket, so there is hidden information underneath, no bread or wine. She needs to go past the castle, provide the resistance with information there, and unfortunately during her journey she comes across two Nazi soldiers. And with that, she also shows her acting talent, namely on the one hand playing this sweet girl who you can't be afraid of at all, and suddenly she's the ice-cold professional killer, because she's been in the resistance for years and of course has also been strongly influenced by her father. Then came one of my favorite shoots, That was the turning point of the German resistance, as it resonates closely with my personal feelings, as I mentioned earlier, and with my family history, of course. Many of these roles that we see there are inspired by real stories that I have heard from my grandparents. That means these are things that partially actually occurred, characters, character traits that truly existed at one time, some of which I had the privilege of getting to know, which is a tremendous honor for me. This particular photo shoot was incredibly special and meaningful because it beautifully captures and showcases the good guys, which is a rare occurrence that makes it truly remarkable and noteworthy in every way. We have consistently been dealing with Nazis at all times. We have repeatedly encountered the situation where good people come across Nazis, but we have never depicted how the good people truly live, because they are not located in any villas and are actively forging their plans at large conference tables. They are positioned in barns, enduring the cold, with a few of them wearing solely lightweight garments and possessing nothing except for hope in their hearts. And this is an image that the complete cast, who were in attendance on that specific day, conveyed the message effectively and portrayed the scene with great skill. There exist individuals with diverse religious beliefs, varying political orientations, different backgrounds, social backgrounds, all united in the common objective of smashing narcissism and building a democratic and free Germany, regardless of their respective faiths, political affiliations, or social upbringings. Meanwhile, a close friend of mine, Marcel Nicolas, has also become a part of the team and assumed the position of technical director. The task assigned to him has truly taken an unexpected twist, elevating it to a whole new level of quality and significance. And that was not only a relief at work, but also ultimately his advice and his suggestions for improving the set and the film have simply given us much more opportunity to perform creative processes and enhance our artistic expression. On the final shooting day, we recreated the same setup that we had previously built in a sports hall. This allowed us to capture the final elements of the intense battle between the German resistance and the Nazis, completing the filming process. Just once again to individuals who have simply delivered exceptional performances during the shoot and who may have been overshadowed in one scene or another because it was not their scene. I think it's nice that roles that were maybe only two-dimensional in the background, where people thought they had no depth, they had no relevance later in the story, that we could simply give these people a platform again with a new scene, give the audience another insight into our script and our visions. Post-production was actually an unconventional process. Usually you start with the cut, with the rough cut, and then pass it on to the different departments for further refinement and editing, color grading, sound design, and ultimately it combines it with the fine cut, eventually transforming it into a finished product and then presenting it as a cohesive whole. We had to do it differently because ultimately these are all individuals who are employed, who are not available to us 24/7. But we had to bring forward or postpone processes in certain situations. And that's why it was also an exciting experiment to see how post-production can work. In the final edit with him, we perfected the entire thing, making it a product that matched the initial presentation, emotional, showcasing dialogue and action, a blend of everything without a linear storyline, with a downward tension curve leading to the end, just as it was originally presented to me at the beginning. But it's also an up and down. Then there's action again, then there's a quiet phase again, then there's action again, the viewer should grasp this diversity of facets, which will also be present in the film later. And if you only show dialogue and only action, then you ultimately show nothing, because it doesn't have any context and also no emotional connection. Once the cut was finalized, we proceeded to do the sound design in order to add the sounds, noises, and effects that were not present on set due to the circumstances not being exactly the same, and because we record the sound separately from any background noise, ensuring that the dialogue is clear and easily understandable. I desired, similar to the films produced by MGM in the 60s and 50s or those set in the USA, as well as films about Nazi Germany, to include English-speaking Nazis who deliver dialogue with a heavily accented, poor German pronunciation. I am aware that it is a bit out of fashion and ultimately there were other reasons why it was done that way in the past, but I believe it has a special charm when Germans speak English, and that had to be done again in Gotterdammerung. How a set should appear and how one imagines it and how it ultimately is, these are actually two different things. There have been numerous instances where I envisioned something and it ultimately materialized in precisely the identical manner. As an illustration, the room of the SS meeting appeared exactly as I had always envisioned it in my mind's eye. The story in the cave looked the same or just like the one in the castle, the shootout at the castle. These were things that looked exactly the same, but on the other hand, there were also things that didn't look like I imagined them. As an illustration, consider the battle in Norway, where the Nazis storm a hill, launch an assault on a mountain where the resistance is currently having a briefing session. And there was, for instance, insufficient snow, and in the end it is also a delicate balance and a conflict between the concept and the expectations, the aspirations one possesses, and the financial resources one has at their disposal. You have to make sure that the money somehow is enough to finance, to support these dreams. But somewhere there is also the point where you just have to make the cut, where you just have to say, you can't make a whole forest full of snow if there is no snow. I have developed very cool ideas in collaboration with Nils Radke, the color grader, on how we can, at the very least, create the sensation of coldness, death, and winter through the skillful implementation of coloration techniques. And I think that this Norway scene has ultimately become one of the most beautiful scenes, merely by allocating time at the conclusion to formulate ideas on how the color scheme of an image has the potential to be developed and enhanced. And ultimately you can only do that within certain limits, of course. One must make sure that the light is great and perfect. In which location could the sun come in? In which location could moonlight come in? What type of light sources do we require in order to determine and accurately perceive what is happening at the present moment in time? For instance, the room condition. Is the room small? Is the room large? Torches are a component of it, positioned on the wall, and naturally they do not emit actual light. However, a lamp has been placed behind them, producing a flickering effect to simulate torches. And such details are simply played through in the end by taking a piece of paper and simply imagining what it would be like if it were really like that. Where does light come from and how can I ultimately implement it with the technical means I have available so that it looks like it should in reality? I am of the belief that the opportunities that this film simply offers, that this project offers, are limitless in nature. And the only limit there is our imagination. And as long as that's the case, as long as it's something that comes from within, that is created by emotions, I firmly believe in the success of this project.